Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, July the 7th, 2025, and today we're talking about mulching around tomatoes in a tropical climate, and we're talking the fall garden. Yeah, now in July, we have to talk about it because it's coming right up in farmer time. Oh, and it's Feedback Monday. So let's do it. All right, y'all. Well, happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and had a nice weekend. You may have noticed, if you were watching on YouTube, that we have some new hats. This new trucker hat with this fun thing right here, and also a corduroy one. Very fun stuff. They are now for sale over at no-tillgrowers.com, and Patreon members should have their discount code. So let me know if you cannot find it, Patreon members, in your messages. Just message me over there. It comes up automatically when you sign up, so it should be there. So check those out, and playing with some new designs for the fall as well. So those will be coming out soon. Also, before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to send our love to everyone in Texas dealing with the aftermath of those floods. My gosh, just absolutely heartbreaking stuff. And we're thinking of you. I don't really need to editorialize further on that too much. You all know how I feel that we could be doing more thoughtful preventative environmental management to help mitigate the risk from extreme weather like this. And we're doing pretty much the exact opposite of that right now. So heartbreaking on basically every level. Anyway, we're going to cover the feedback from last week's topics today because, well, we didn't have a Friday episode, so no Feedback Friday, obviously, but also there were some good conversations and comments about the range of topics we explored, so I wanted to go back and kind of talk about those. I get a lot of positive feedback about the feedback days, so, don't want to skip that if we can help it. And as a bonus, you will get 2 feedback days this week, so score. Last Monday, we discussed education and learning in context. You will remember that my basic argument was that we need to teach math, science, etc. more in context in schools to kind of get kids interested in it and help it stick in gardens and carpentry class and workshops, that sort of stuff. And there were basically 3 different types of critiques. 1 was people defending academia, kind of as is. 2 were people who were suggesting that carpentry, sewing, gardening, etc. should be learned at home. And then the 3rd type of response was people that agreed with me, more or less, to which I actually have a critique. To the academia defenders, there is no reason higher and higher levels of complexity couldn't still be taught, even in classroom settings. But take me, for example. I slept through almost all of my biology and science classes. Ditto chemistry, ditto math. I fell in love with biology and science not because I learned photosynthesis on a whiteboard, but because I saw a large green plant make a cluster of grapes from sunshine, soil, water, and air. Some people may have just had better teachers of those subjects, but I don't remember disliking my teachers. I just remember those being boring subjects. To those who say those skills should be learned at home, sure, maybe, but also the percentage of kids who live at homes where garden space is available has to be an exceedingly low percentage of our population. Or moreover, the percentage of kids who have parents who are, 1, good at teaching, which is a skill in and of itself, and 2, have the requisite know-how and or have the time, cannot be very many. Teachers are taught to teach. We, as a culture, kind of decide what and how they teach it. And to those who agree with me, carry on, though I should say, being critical of my own self here, as you should always do, not every school has access to gardens or machine shops, etc. So teaching in context is not a possibility for every school. Now, no education system meets the needs of every kid because the reality is that we try to build generic educational systems and kids are not generic. They are not cogs. Not every plant needs the same thing to thrive. And likewise, that same thing applies to children. Not every child learns in the exact same way. And I should also add that nothing I talked about in that episode was particularly groundbreaking. I was basically describing some version of like Montessori, Emilia-Romagna kind of style education that already exists, but is largely limited to people who can afford it. For me, especially staring at 20 to 50% unemployment in the near future due to automation and advances in AI, primarily in STEM-related fields, but also art, truck driving, etc., the effects of which I think we are gravely underestimating as a society, skills might very well be the future, or at least gives our children something we know and they know they can use. Or maybe I just want my kids to be better mechanics and carpenters than me because it would come in really handy on the farm. Probably that. Also, thanks for the congrats on the sobriety. It's wild to have a brain that actually occasionally works, like I expected to. Emphasis on the occasionally, but a nice change of pace, really. So Appreciate you all. Then last Tuesday, we got lots of great comments on the segment on growing things for the kitchen when you can't eat alliums. At Foraging Your Roots wrote, quote, a couple of other aromatic plants to consider would be sweet cicely or anise root, shiso or northern bayberry. The first two are very potent flavors, while the last one is very, very subtle. I suppose you could also add spicebush, leaves of dried berries, and sweet fern, if you're fortunate enough to have it in your local nursery, to the list as well. Lots of underappreciated smellies out there, end quote. I agree, and I also agree on the smellies and also the term smellies. Plus, I will second shiso and spicebush, two good ones for sure. A couple of people like at Sharon Chu, 2144 recommended tarragon, which yes to that. Quote, tarragon is delicious with anise flavor. It's a perennial in my zone, 6B on mostly sunny slope. Tulsi, aka holy basil, smells divine like sweet cinnamon, tastes great in Asian foods. Let it grow big and bushy just for the pleasure of brushing by it to smell its intoxicating aroma, end quote. Yep, I'm good with those. I also that day bemoaned how discussing environmentalism has become uncool, and I liked what at Lee Cussub, 1196, wrote, quote, hey Jesse, you are not alone. We care about the environment. Ecological ways of doing things are often more expensive at the outset, but less so over time. Never mind the fact that they help the earth and everything that lives on it. Could not be more with you on this. I don't know how it's become uncool to talk about it, but in that case, I guess I'm just very uncool, end quote. Yeah, here. On Wednesday, we talked about sowing into a standing cover crop, and at ZZXXVVYY2, yep, that's their name, wrote, quote, Masanobu Fukuoka would pelletize seeds in clay slurry, and then once they're dry, broadcast them in clover cover crop. He would water heavily to get the seeds to sprout. Once they were about an inch high, he would set his mower just above that and mow the clover. This would stunt the clover and open up sunlight for the new sprouts so they could grow up through the clover, perhaps give something like this a try, end quote. And what's funny is that the Fukuoka seed balls did come to mind when I was thinking about this, but you'd have to find a way to make it less, first of all, just make the seed balls themselves less labor intensive to do it on any sort of scale, like a soil blocker maybe capable of handling clay. I have tried similar things using compost slurries and the like, but not to quite the same effect. And also, clover's pretty aggressive. Like it's going to be hard to deal with that, depending on what you're trying to plant next. Also, I liked what at Darren McGann wrote, quote, I really like the addition of the clips of viewers' farms. Nice touch, end quote. And also, William Curry 185, who wrote, quote, just got to say, I really like the views from the different farms in 20-second snippets. Whoever thought of that is brilliant and good work. Thanks for the time, attention, and videos, Farmer J, end quote. Yeah, throughout the last week, we got great comments about the videos you all submitted, and I have enjoyed them too. I think we actually still have a few left that we will add this week, in fact, so be on the lookout for that. Maybe we will try to make that somewhat of a regular thing, if not someday weekly thing on the show, so that should be fun. Thank you all for playing along. Then on Thursday, we talked about seed storage option, and I liked this from at KPR, who wrote, quote, the way I store my seeds is I have a photo album and I slide the seed packets into the photo slots. They are in alphabetical order, except I have dedicated pages for flowers, tomatoes, and peppers. I keep the album in a plastic tote that seals to protect from moisture and keep it all in my dark, cold basement. This doesn't work for bulky seeds like corn and peas, obviously. So for those, I keep them in the packets in the same plastic tote, end quote. Thank you, and I love that idea. And I also liked this from at AlexBurns4568, who wrote, quote, big fan of using opaque photo boxes. Opaque manages light. The individual boxes are slightly larger than most seed packets, making them space efficient, and large cases that the boxes come in usually hold around 16 individual boxes. I place silica packets in the individual boxes to manage humidity, label everything, and you're good to go, end quote. So yeah, good options there. Now, I was also critical that day of fireworks, which I assume is where this comment came from, and so, or at least like what it's referencing from at Trev's Kiok 8295, who wrote, quote, I wish you loved your country as much as gardening, end quote. And with respect to this person, I think there's no greater act of love for a country than suggesting maybe we shouldn't pollute it. Change happens because our understanding grows. It does not have to be a bad thing. I'm not saying don't celebrate things, just change how we celebrate something so it's not, for instance, contaminating our air or water or disrupting migratory animals, torturing combat veterans, or any of the other dozen of very well-researched reasons to not use fireworks. The land beneath your feet, your neighbors, your wildlife, your water, all of that is your country. Care for that or you don't care for your country at all. Period. Full stop. Anyway, thanks as always for your contributions this week. Friends, you all rock. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break and hear from a few of you all. And then when we come back, mulching around plant stems, BRB.
Name is Ian, live in North Idaho, Zone 4B. Potatoes are doing well, garlic's about ready to come out. Strawberries have been great this year. Peppers are a little slow. Everything else is coming along. Raspberries about ready. More strawberries and the rest.
Good morning, Farmer Jesse. This is Jennifer. I live just north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, so I'm in the high desert, and I'm just a home grower. I only sell if I have a bumper crop. So this is my hoop house, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for your videos and your podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Mark Hare, who asks, and note, Mark, that I have edited the question a little bit just to fit the podcast context. Mark writes, quote, "We include compost as part of our no-till system. We flip beds by cutting previous crops at soil level or slightly below for mustard/cabbage crops, as I learned from you all. Plant the new crop and almost immediately add 3 to 4 centimeters of compost mulch. We mix our compost mulch using our own sifted compost, ground coconut fiber, our own worm compost, and some biochar, although we don't always have both the biochar worm compost at the same time. That means that in any 12-month period, we put compost mulch a minimum of 4 or 5 times. Often, for bigger plant starts like tomatoes, we spread the compost thinner by adding mulching material that we get from the city, generally a mix of chopped limbs, branches, twigs, and leaves. I worry that we may be adding to our already heavy mildew and other fungal disease problems when we use mulching material. What do you think?" End quote. Okay, awesome. Thanks here, Mark, for this question. And for context, listeners and watchers, Mark grows in the central plateau of Costa Rica outside of downtown San Jose. So as far as I know, warm, tropical, wet, all those good things. The general idea with fungal diseases and mulches is that you need to keep the base of the plant clear of mulch touching it in general. Compost, so long as it's fully decomposed, is generally fine because roots can sink themselves into it, but carbonaceous stuff like perhaps the twigs and sticks, etc., that you mentioned here might indeed create a problem. Part of that, however, is not necessarily that they would be sharing pathogens or the saprotrophic fungi, for instance, that decompose cellulose, but rather that having that mulch up against the plants can reduce airflow and trap moisture, which is just what pathogenic fungi are hoping you will do. So although I think it's fine to have that sort of stuff around your plants, I would make sure to leave at least a little bit of a gap right up against the plant stems to ensure they don't create fungal issues. Crops like tomatoes can be really tough in tropical climates for all the moisture, but also for pests. I know some tropical growers struggle to produce tomatoes for all the fruit flies that are so aggressive that they will get into the fruit before it's even fully ripe. Now, I will mulch tomatoes with hay sometimes, ditto peppers, potatoes, and etc. But I think the reason, or at least I assume the reason, that it is less of a concern in terms of the fungal diseases is that that type of mulch tends to lay flat against the surface after a couple of weeks, so perhaps it's not there long enough to present problems. Mulch also tends to go down like onto the ground when a plant is at its most vigorous, reducing the risk. Like when a plant is growing fast, it's not as much of a risk of the fungal diseases. With the mulch you describe, I would just be concerned that it's not laying flat against the ground, sort of trapping in moisture right around the base of the plant. Otherwise, anything you all might add to that? Experiences with mulches damaging stems of plants for you all in tropical conditions or otherwise? Leaf mulches, for instance, are one that I would probably be careful with right up against your stems, but I'd be curious what you all think and what you all have experienced. Anyway, up next, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, nothing says July like the fall garden. BRB.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann, and I grow cut flowers near Columbia, South Carolina in Zone 8B. I had a great spring season, no late frost or anything crazy. And I'm taking a break here in the summer, and I'll pick back up in the fall when it cools off a little bit and people want to have events again. Thank you for your help.
Hi, I'm Jasmine, growing in North Alabama, and right now the garden's off to a slow start. So I decided to take my time this spring getting things out, and then with all the rain, things are really just now trying to catch up. So hopefully this week of 90+ degree days makes a difference.
Hey everyone, Michael Lang here with Happy Kitchen Farm. We are based in Tacoma, Washington, Zone 8B. And yeah, it's been a relatively cool and mild spring and summer so far, which is great. We need it because we are developing a new farm site, and I'm spending a lot of time digging up blackberry. So grateful for the weather.
All right, after a week of hovering around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, that would be like 37.5 Celsius, I am excited to report that you should be thinking about your fall garden. For some of you, you are likely way ahead on this, and because you're in a colder climate where your fall gardens have to go out basically in tandem with your summer gardens. For us, our fall gardens usually start at the end of June / beginning of July with the starting of the ridiculously long season crops known as the brassicas. See what I did there? I crammed that word brat in there like a dad would. That would be the longer season brassicas that both hate the heat and require really long season to mature. So that would include things like your market cabbages, your Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, some of the longer season broccolis, and so on. Sunlight has already started to slowly fall for us, but in August is when it really begins to dive. So if those crops do not have a good head start, they will not fully size up by the time the cold really sets in. Now, if you're in a colder climate where you have cool nights and cool summers in general, these crops can be relatively easy to handle. That's kind of the climate they prefer. For us, growing crops like these here is a bit like trying to get a kid to eat something they don't want to. It's a battle, and often in the end, neither the crop nor the farmer is particularly happy with each other. But anyway, for the longer season crops, it's time to get those started and get those beds ready. Ditto things like fennel, which likewise have pretty long seasons, but are admittedly less ornery in the heat, so that's nice. For the Napa cabbage, tatsoi, bok choy, kale, head lettuce, those sorts of things, I can wait a few more weeks on those before I'm really like settled in for the fall versions. Our fall and winter carrots, however, are a crop that I like to get in by mid-July to late July with the 70+ day varieties, at least like Romance, that store really well. Napoli and Mokum and other shorter day to maturity varieties like that, I just plant every week or two all season, so they don't really count. They are spring and summer and fall already. Some of the other longer season radishes like daikons and watermelon radishes, etc., I will still wait on those until mid-August or so. Same with some of the longer season storage beets, just depends on their days to maturity. If it's a 50-day to maturity or less, I will wait until mid-August in my climate at earliest so they don't bolt and they get that nice fall flavor at the same time. Spinach falls into that category as well, but I usually do try to start some in cell trays in August by germinating it using the fridge to cool the seeded trays down for a couple days, and then I take them out at night. I described that in a video. I'll post that in the show notes. If the crop, whatever it is, it's like a 65 days to maturity or more, I try to get that in or started before the end of July. And if they are like 70+ days to maturity crops, pretty much now until the end of the month, I have to get those going. That may not make sense for everyone in every context, and please feel free to add your sort of guiding rules in the comment section for your context, but that's what works here. I find the heat is the hardest thing to deal with in terms of fall crops for us because with the heat comes stress, and with stress comes pests and or diseases. So maybe, employing some shade cloth from time to time, depending on what the crop is, can come in handy for you as it does for us, at least in the establishment phase. And of course, compost. A nice rich bed for, your, especially those like heavy feeder brassicas really goes a long way. I mean, it just helps them get through that pest and disease challenge at the beginning of their life. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, or at least vaguely insightful glimpse into the fresh fall garden. And I think we're going to done day this Monday. That's not a thing. I don't even know if I like saying it. But anyway, don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. An enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. She'd love to hear from you. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com. That helps to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Oh, it's a mystery. Let's see if we can find him. Doug Wagner, Gerard Holodeck. That's a cool name. And Anxious Pancakes. Here. Feel that. So this week's story, should you choose to accept it, is about a young boy and his microscope. The microscope was a gift from his mom, who needed kind of something for him to do to keep him occupied during the summer while she worked. She had tried a bunch of different things, sports, books, Legos, but the one thing that really stuck was that microscope. The little boy loved to go out to the pond behind their house and get some water samples, and then spent hours just looking at the tiny droplets, enthralled by all the wiggly, weird little creatures that would pop up, until one day he spotted something relatively unusual in the water droplet. Something very familiar and simultaneously completely impossible. What that is for tomorrow on Waterworld. I'll bet there's never been anything named that. So it probably doesn't have like any sort of negative connotations or associations. So anyway, yeah, I feel pretty lucky to have come up with that. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Tuesday. Sure. Right on. Bye.